Before my grandfather died, I convinced him to tell me a bunch of different stories about his time as an American soldier in Vietnam. Quite a few of them are paranormal out of the ordinary, so I thought that I should share them with UCHEX. If you have any knowledge about the Vietnamese paranormal stuff, please share, as I have a limited understanding of the subject. Also, wartime paranormal story thread, I guess. First, a little bit of context. My grandfather drafted, sent to Nam infantryman, private. On top of this, my grandfather is really short. Like 5'4" short. Gets assigned as a tunnel rat. Disarm explosives and booby traps above ground. Fight through and destroy Viet Cong tunnels below ground. Well, fuck, may as well shoot me right now. Another guy in his platoon, half Hispanic, is short, not as short as him, but still short. His name is Daniel, and is assigned as a tunnel rat with my grandfather. Together they go on amazing subterranean adventures. JK, some of the shit they saw was, according to my grandfather, horrifying and mind-boggling. Story number 1. Sent to clear out and destroy the tunnels. Equipped with a shitty flashlight, bayonet, some explosives, and an old revolver because the M1911 were apparently shit for clearing out tunnels. Basic mission, they've done this a couple times before by now. Tunnels are pretty small, even for a rat tunnel. Not finding any traps or Viet Cong, the tunnels almost seem abandoned. Whatever, they stay on guard for booby traps or armed gooks lurking behind corners. Come to a larger section in the tunnels, they can stop crawling and go into a crouching at half-standing position. They can hear water running through the tunnel, start to think that they either are above a river, or that the tunnel just lead into a watery cavern. Daniel shines flashlight over to the other side of the room. Sees about 4 completely massive spiders. My grandfather says that they were longer than a foot, and each had a leg span of about 2.5 feet. 3 of them were bunched up right next to each other, one was resting about 3 feet away from the cluster. My grandfather hates spiders, he sits there paralyzed. Both of them sit there quietly, just staring at the spiders. This goes on for about 2 minutes. Grandfather takes his eyes off the cluster, looks towards the other one resting alone. It's not there. It's not there. My grandfather looks around, and sees the spider on his left, slowly but steadily advancing towards them. He screams, fires at the thing. Doesn't even seem to slow it down. He hauls ass back up the tunnel, with Daniel following close behind him. Daniel throws a grenade into the chamber as they are climbing back up through the tunnels. Make it out, screaming and yelling about spiders. Nothing follows them out, must have died from the grenade, or it just stopped pursuing them. My grandfather told me after the story that he is pretty sure that it wasn't even a Viet Cong tunnel they climbed into, but a tunnel that the spiders themselves made. Story number 2. This one is shorter. Once again, crawling underground to destroy a Viet Cong tunnel. Crouch walking through the tunnels, they find a not-so-hidden booby trap. It's one of those booby traps that would release a bunch of scorpions or snakes upon tripping it. Grandfather and Daniel stop to consider their options. Figure that they might be able to disarm the trap. How hard could it be? Pretty hard apparently. This one was very complex for some reason. Not sure how to disarm the trap without releasing poisonous death animals. They decide to just blow the fucker up, hope that the tunnel doesn't collapse. America Pienge. Back up a good bit, lob a grenade over in the general direction. Wait, collateral damage. Trap is gone, continue forward. As they get to where the former trap was, they notice another tunnel, exposed by the grenade. Out of the new tunnel comes a 5 long centipede, which barrels right past them and down deeper into the tunnels. Fuck this JPEG. Not wanting another incident like with the spiders, they plant their charges and haul ass out of the tunnel. They make it out of the tunnels, shaken, but no worse for wear. Pic related is the first thing Google gave me when I typed in Vietnam centipede. Story number 3. This one actually doesn't involve my grandfather directly, but is about some of the stories that he heard from other guys while over there. At the beginning of the war, my grandfather was talking to a bunch of guys from a different company. They tell him about how they saw a bunch of wild apes in the jungles. Bullshit, there are no apes in Vietnam. As the war goes on, more and more guys claim to have seen these apes. They called them rock apes, as they threw rocks at the soldiers they encountered. Apparently they were coated in red hair, and were normally about 5 feet tall. Grandfather still isn't convinced. Thinks that they are either making shit up, or are mistaken. A bunch of guys get really defensive. Say that they were awoken in the middle of the night by screams and hollers, while being pelted by rocks, and when they went out to investigate, they were ambushed by the things. Apparently the apes were extremely strong, and managed to kill 2 different soldiers. Still managed to fend them off. Grandfather still doesn't really believe the guy, which was odd because he saw a lot of weird shit too. Grandfather says that he also heard stories about giant snakes in the jungles. Story number 4. About halfway through the war. Orders to clear out some tunnels, start crawling through. Start faintly hearing voices, either gooks or running water. Keep working their way through the tunnels. Voices get louder and louder. Oh fuck, this isn't water. Realize that they are probably really close to a room full of gooks. Decide to ambush them, then blow up the tunnels. Pull out their revolvers and rush further down into the caves. Fall into a spacious room. Large white eyes all around them. Fuck, that's a lot of gooks. Raising his flashlight, he notices they are not Viet Cong. According to my grandfather, they were about 3-4 feet tall, lanky, white, and had big eyes and ears. They were each wearing a bunch of different clothes, some obviously from looted corpses, others were basically just wearing rags. They make a hissing sound at him and Daniel, and start running deeper into the tunnels. Grandfather and Daniel are kind of awestruck, and don't know what to do. Daniel keeps going on about Latin American folklore involving gnomes and shit. They eventually just climb out and report the tunnels as being abandoned. Story number 5. This one actually doesn't involve tunnels. Day off, grandfather and others resting. A few of the other soldiers go down to a nearby river to cool off. About 30 minutes later, one soldier comes back screaming about how something in the river attacked one of them. They grab their rifles and a first aid kit and run down to the river. 3 soldiers are on the bank of the river, one is bleeding profusely and the other 2 are administering basic first aid. Grandfather says that something tore his left leg completely off. They look in the river, which is now red from blood. They see a giant serpent eel-like creature swimming around, yellowish and a long fins on its side. Said it looked like a massive moray eel with fins. What the fuck is this thing? They fire on it, and it darts further down the river. They get the guy back to camp, but he dies of blood loss along the way. Story number 6. Grandfather and Daniel about to dive into some more tunnels. About to go in, when they hear a deafening roar come from the tunnel. Says it sounded like a fucking dragon. They are all stunned. Look at a nearby officer, who just kind of shrugs and tells them to go in. Geez, thanks, asshole. This tunnel is apparently worse than most. Filled with giant ants and spiders. Fucking spiders. Anyways, grandfather continues to crawl through. The roaring gets more frequent the further they crawl down. Fuck this, not going to die today. They plant the charges right there, and haul ass out of the tunnel. As they are crawling back up, the tunnel starts shaking like mad. They hurry the fuck up, and get back to the surface. Everything up there is shaking too. They detonate the charges, destroying most of the tunnel. Roaring and shaking proceeds to stop. I might be a little longer on the next one. It's long, and probably the weirdest and most unbelievable of the bunch. Last paranormal story I have. Even I have a hard time believing this one at times, but my grandfather was almost certainly sincere when telling it. He was crying, and absolutely racked with grief. This one is also a 2-parter. Near the end of the war. Once again, clearing out tunnels. No creepy crawlies thus far. Crawling through, they realize that this tunnel leads into a cave of some sort. They explore the cave for a bit. They are about to head back up, when they realize that there is a light coming from one of the passages in the cave, not either of their lights. Oh shit. They grasp their revolvers and walk through the passage. My grandfather says that they walked into a well-lit room filled with brightly colored plant life that they couldn't recognize. The light was coming from an orb on the ceiling of the cave. Vividly colored birds flying around everywhere. What the actual fuck is this place? Him and Daniel explore a little. Among other things, he finds spiky red fruit the size of a watermelon, and a bright yellow pool of water. Grandfather says it looked like he was as in a fever dream. They head towards the back of the room. Find a stone altar. Blood is stained across the stone, and there is a couple of knives and other tools lying about stone. Their curiosity turns into dread. They turn around to get the hell out of there. They stop. There are 5 reptilian-looking humanoids staring at them. Says they were about 5.5 feet tall, blackish green, and scaly. They all appear to be wearing robes of some sort. Without hesitating, my grandfather and Daniel fire upon the creatures. One goes down, another shrieks out in pain. The room gets extraordinarily bright, and my grandfather passes out. Grandfather wakes up back in the main part of the cave. The passage him and Daniel went down is gone. Daniel is also lying next to him, but is barely breathing. My grandfather can only do so much for him down here, and drags Daniel out of the cave and back up through the tunnels. He gets back out, and hauls up Daniel. They grab him and send him off to get medical attention. After pulling Daniel out of the cave, grandfather remembers about what he saw in the cave. Says that his vision once again goes black, and that he can't even remember the next 2 days. According to the other guys in his platoon, my grandfather was in a state of shock. He apparently could barely speak, and stuttered a lot. Almost like he was shell-shocked or something. He was also sent to get medical attention. 2 days later, he mostly recovers. He goes back, asks the platoon about Daniel. Apparently he died shortly after being pulled out of the tunnels. Grandfather breaks down. Apparently the war was close to ending after that. He only delved into 2 more tunnels after that experience. He legitimately hated anything subterranean after that. He despised caving, insects and lizards, and even requested to be cremated so that he wouldn't be buried underground. I showed him a picture of a generic reptilian alien, pic related, and he just about had a heart attack. He said that it just needed to be blacker, but that besides that it was pretty close. I don't have any more paranormal stories from my grandfather about the war. Feel free to share if you have your own.